He needs to keep his promises.
You don't know what's true anymore.
It hurts me to see people burning the flag.
Race relations.
Tells me I can't have a gun.
I just don't like the politics. Unbelievable.
It's what you've been waiting for all day. America Now. Buck Sexton with America Now. Join the conversation. Call Buck toll-free at 844-900-BUCK. That's 844-900-2825. Sharp mind, strong voice. Buck Sexton.
Buck Sexton here with you all now on America Now. Thank you so much for joining. Great to have you as always. You can call in. Our lines are open. And since we're just starting, there are spots available. There are slots for your call. 844-900-2825. 844-900-BUCK. Buck, like my name. Also, you can send me your thoughts on Facebook.com/Buck Sexton or at Buck Sexton on Twitter. If you are listening, I will try to be responding live to social media throughout the show, as I always do. A lot going on tonight. You know, last week, during our first week here of Buck Sexton with America Live, I was talking a bit about how we had the fortune of being able to bring you breaking news, despite the fact that there's been much of the news cycle already had been going on throughout the day. And the same thing is true tonight. It looks like right now there's some movement on a couple of very important political topics. We have some movement on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and Judge Robart out there in Seattle, Washington. There's a call going on tonight to figure out what the next steps there will be. And townhall.com reporting that the Trump administration has already put in the paperwork for an en banc review of all of the Ninth Circuit, or it's actually not all because the Ninth Circuit's so big, but a larger quorum of the Ninth Circuit judges. We also have the possibility, and I think it's going to be coming up in about an hour, of a vote on Steve Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary. Now, you'd think that this wouldn't be such a big deal, that there are other issues that the left would focus. And, of course, they can't get enough of how terrible the Trump administration is and all the things that they can complain about and point out and try to undermine and try to shake the confidence of the American people in this new executive branch leadership. But we saw with Betsy DeVos that there is no role in the Trump administration that is safe from their hatred. And Steve Mnuchin, who was the subject, the unfortunate target of fake news before, it's a guy who's going to be Treasury Secretary, has all the credentials you'd want in somebody who's going to be involved in a very senior economic and financial role in the government, a guy who is making sure that he pays attention to where all the money's going and what we're spending and what we're doing. Monetary policy. Mnuchin has that covered, you'd think. He's somebody who should be able to get through this process pretty quickly. But they ran stories, some of the media ran stories about how he was part of a company that ran a company that foreclosed on a widow's home, I believe, for 79 cents. Never happened, totally fake. But as we've seen, these fake news stories keep popping up, and they're always in the same political direction. They seem to have a consistent theme, and that theme is, well, if it's terrible about Trump, it must be true even when it's not, or one of his advisors, or somebody in his administration. But I do think that they finally, that the media and the left believe that they have cornered a senior member of the Trump administration here. We'll be talking about this more, I believe, in the next hour as well. You have National Security Advisor Flynn, Lieutenant General Flynn, career military officer, who has gotten into some trouble here. It's not clear exactly what's going to happen because it's not clear what was said and done yet. And much of this, of course, is coming to us from media outlets that are overtly hostile towards the administration. They may not admit that, but anybody who reads their stories or watches their broadcasts on a regular basis would come to that very obvious conclusion. They have wanted to get somebody in the Trump administration in hot water, and they're now calling for the firing of, as I said, a career military officer who's currently a national security advisor. There are so many stories about process and bureaucratic dysfunction with regard to this White House, with regard to this new National Security Council. National Security Council, by the way, you hear it spoken about a lot. I had some familiarity with it back during my time as a CIA analyst, interacting with the National Security Council on numerous occasions. And these are generally civil servants, subject matter experts who have either regional or functional expertise, regional, an area, continent, functional, counterterrorism, something like that. And they're all upset because this new administration's come in, and of course they must be talking to the press about how these meetings are going, some of these civil servants. So once again, we run into the built-in hostility, the permanent hostility of the permanent government, in this case, the civil service bureaucracy. There are stories about senior Trump officials, appointees as opposed to civil servants, people who have their job because Donald Trump and his top people thought that they would be good in the job, as opposed to someone who is a government employee assigned by their home agency, for example, to work at the NSC. They're saying that there are issues with the politicization of these meetings, that in at least one meeting, the NSC, the NSC senior personnel, in this case, the Deputy National Security Advisor, according to the New York Times, told everybody in the room they have to make America great again. I would assume that was said somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but I don't know. I wasn't in the room. But there's leaks all over. There are leaks all over the place right now, if you believe the press. There's another whole aspect to this story, which is that, isn't it fascinating? The media jumps all over. And if you saw the interaction between Stephen Miller, senior policy advisor for the Trump administration, on Sunday, and George Stephanopoulos, who is openly antagonistic and hostile towards Miller. I mean, the way that he spoke to this guy, the exchange that they had, is like, I mean, you're the worst. You don't have any evidence. So I understand we can hold the White House to a different and higher standard than we hold major news organizations, and I think we should, and I think we do. But on the flip side of this, it is fascinating to me that the American people are supposed to come to very important judgments about how their government is functioning and what's happening with their government based upon anonymous sourcing that journalists who are overwhelmingly hostile to the administration will never have to disclose to us and never have to verify. And we know that they have run a bunch of fake news stories the last few months. So they are asking for some degree of faith. I don't know if you want to put that degree of faith in their reporting on matters that are specifically damaging to the administration, but we'll see. On this issue of General Flynn and the National Security Advisor, it was said at the time that he spoke, and I also have to point out, just as there are leaks from the NSC about how dysfunctional the NSC is right now and how there are meetings going on where there's no lights on because no one can find the light switch. I'm not making that up. That's not an exaggeration. It's actually what I believe it was the Washington Post or the New York Times. I forget. They jumble together in my brain. So those are two news sources that are the New York Times Post. I mean, it's all the same thing to me. But they actually reported that there were some meetings going on in NSC or in the White House in the dark, so we could find the light switch. It seems a little much, but maybe that's the case. I don't know. Could be hard to find a light switch. Maybe they have to clap or something to get it to go on. But Mike Flynn had this phone call. That much has been confirmed with the Russian ambassador. It seems very likely that we learned about this phone call as a result of, again, a leak. Perhaps a very high-up leak from the previous occupants of the White House, but we don't know. But leaking classified to harm a senior or any government employee, but to harm a very senior administration official, is about as dirty as politics are going to get in this country. I mean, that's high. It's illegal, should be pointed out. Not that anyone's going to care about that now. But here's the other side of this as well. Doesn't seem like Flynn was necessarily totally upfront about the contents of that conversation based on what's been said since then. And that wouldn't necessarily be a problem. Wouldn't be a problem because I think most people that support Trump are just going to say, all right, well, he got caught up for a second and who cares? The phone call's not that big a deal. But based on the reports, and again, I don't know if they're true, and I can't run around independently verifying every news report, so I can just read it with skepticism and try to get to the facts. He may have not told Pence, the vice president, what was going on, and that may be an unforgivable sin for this administration, and that may lead to the first senior administration official we know of in real hot water and possibly losing his job. Only a few weeks in the administration. I don't think that's going to happen, but the calls for it are getting very loud. What do you think about this Flynn situation? What do you think about the Mnuchin vote tonight? And, of course, the Ninth Circuit en banc review, 844-900-2825. Buck Sexton with America Now. Buck Sexton back with you all now. 844-900-BUCK. In case this is your first night tuning in to Buck Sexton with America Now, a little background on me. I'm a former CIA analyst. Also spent some time at the NYPD Intelligence Division for counterterrorism, and then moved on to The Blaze. I have worked at CNN. I have appeared many times on Fox News, doing radio and TV for the last, going on 6 years now, I guess. Yeah. So there you have it. And I filled in for Rush, Glenn, and Sean. So we have Glenn 9 to 12 and Rush 12 to 3, Sean 3 to 6, and now Buck 6 to 9 Eastern with America Now. So there you have it. If you want to download any shows from last week or from tonight, go to americanowradio.com/podcast. Okay, I mentioned some evasiveness. Let's get right back into it. I've got so much to cover today. The en banc review, the Mnuchin vote, the Trudeau-Trump press conference, which was kind of like a big bro hug. They were like hugging it out. They were having a good time. And then just all sorts of stories of leftist craziness from campuses to beyond, to the Grammys if we have time. We got cheating on Netflix cheating, rather, which is not really cheating. It's just a fun way of saying it. I got so much show. You got to stay with me through the rest of it. But I want to get back to the Mike Flynn issue because this is breaking right now. We have at least some reports in that General Flynn has apologized to Pence, according to ABC News here, for misleading him about the Russia call. Again, people will deal with a lot because they see that there is this complete all-out effort to annihilate the Trump presidency before it even gets going, to take this administration out politically as quickly as possible. And there's a lot of leeway that people will give Trump, those who at least are open-minded about the Trump administration. You don't have to be a Trumpster. You just have to, or a Trumper, whichever is the preferred nomenclature. You've just got to recognize the media, and when I say media, we could, Democrats, media, the left, we can use those interchangeably here on the show, and we will. But they want to destroy. They're not looking to reform. They're not looking to moderate. They're not looking for a third way, a central path, none of that. They want payback. Hillary's supposed to be the president. Always remember that. In their minds, Hillary is the rightful president of the United States. It was fake news and Russia and the FBI director Comey. They're the reason that Trump won. And all the bad things about this country. They're the reason that Trump won, not because the American people wanted something different. That's what the left believes. All of them put together. But when you have people from inside of Trump's inner circle, when you have his most trusted personnel having problems when it comes to trusting each other, then these news reports about a dysfunctional White House and about a lack of clear communication and processes and bumbling and fumbling, all of that starts to, even to those of us who discount a lot of the media stuff as smears, we start to say to ourselves, maybe there are some problems here. It sounds like this is a problem. And it was pretty clear on Sunday when you had Steve Miller, who's up there, who's obviously a very sharp guy, intellectually, a very smart guy. His delivery, I leave to you to decipher or to determine for yourself whether it is effective for you or not as a means of communication, as a communicator for the administration. But he's certainly a smart guy. He was asked about Flynn specifically, and he got a little evasive. Play the clip, please.
On answering the policy questions that you have, General Flynn has served his country admirably. He's a 3-star general. He's head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and I look forward to having more discussions about this in the future.
So the White House did not give you anything to say other than that?
They did not give me anything to say.
You cannot. So you cannot say whether or
asked
not
and answered, Chuck.
The president
asked and answered. And his answer was that General Flynn served his country honorably, which he did, and that he had nothing really more to say other than that. And that's now not all that's out there. As I said to you, at least ABC News is reporting, and they may retract it. Keep in mind, there was a report, what was it, last Friday or maybe it was Thursday, I forget. Now, last week, we reported to you here live that major news sources were saying the Trump administration had already said they would not seek to appeal the decision of the Ninth Circuit. And then within minutes, it was like, actually, psych, we are going to appeal that. Whoa, okay. That's a quick turnaround. Who would have thought? And we'll find out more about that tonight, I think, where that's going and the processes that will be in place for that. Keep in mind, there are 29 active judges in the Ninth Circuit, so an 11-member panel would be convened for the case if it goes to en banc. I feel like we should come up with a better term than that, but an en banc hearing, right? Borrowing from the French. Speaking of which, Trudeau, we have to talk about his meeting. Yes, Mr. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, is very smooth today on the press conference, no? Mais oui. Hello, ladies. This is Monsieur Trudeau. I come down to your country to make. Oh, now see, you get too French, you start to get German. That's the problem. You got to keep it clear in your head. We'll get back to Monsieur Trudeau later on, but for now, the circling the wagons that the Trump team has had to do, and I say to you sometimes, you might as well just jump into the trench because you're either with the left on their desire to utterly destroy this administration and everybody who works in it. They want their reputations ruined. They want people to go to prison. And I know people can say, oh, but look at Obama. No, I'm sorry. I was alive during the early weeks of the Obama administration, and you did not have every major newspaper and every major channel, with one exception, with just a constant frenzy of anti-Trump administration stories, opposing them on policy. It's so clear that they are in opposition, that they're not bringing you information and letting you decide, that they have come up with a narrative, and they're trying to feed that narrative, not just by picking and even cherry-picking facts, but in some cases, manufacturing facts. This is a problem, my friends. This is something that should bother all of us, and I'm sure it bothers many of you. But with Flynn, if he wasn't keeping it real, if he didn't give the straight scoop to Pence, and then Pence goes out there and looks foolish, you can't have that. I've been around enough senior administration officials and senior intelligence community people that the moment that there is lack of trust between them, I mean, you've really, especially on the national security side, you all got to be on the same team, and that means always, all day, all the time. It doesn't mean you have to agree all the time, but it just means there has to be trust and a sense that the mission is all that really matters, the mission of defending this country, protecting this country, and that means you can't let other little things get in the way. You can't allow the media to create fissures and breaks between you and those around you that you have to have at your side, because we know that they're going to get criticized on the policy side. We know that they're going to be saying that whatever Trump does in the Middle East, vis-a-vis China, vis-a-vis Mexico, you name it, they're going to come after that. But it can't be dysfunctional on the inside. There has to be a united front. And if I think they might let this one go, we'll see. But if General Flynn has to step down, if the National Security Advisor ends up resigning in month one in a sense, but the second month by calendar, it's just going to make the media that much more fired up. They're going to think that they're back and they can do whatever they want.
Buck Sexton with America Now, where there's always something to talk about, where you can trade opinions with Buck. Not sure you'll win, though. Just call 844-900-BUCK. That's 844-900-2825. All right, Buck, you're on.
All right, Buck Sexton back with you now, and we are joined by Ben Shapiro. He is the editor-in-chief of DailyWire.com, a syndicated columnist, host of The Ben Shapiro Show and The Morning Answer. Ben, thank you very much for calling in.
Hey, Buck. Hope you're doing well.
I'm good, thank you. Let's start with the Ninth Circuit, the en banc review, and the way forward for this immigration order. Where do you see the state of play right now?
Well, I mean, I think that appealing it to the Supreme Court's a mistake because it's likely to split 4-4 with Justice Kennedy making sure that the executive order is basically struck down at the Ninth Circuit level. I think the smart thing, if Trump wants to uphold this thing, the smart thing for him to do is just to wait until Gorsuch is confirmed or to rewrite the executive order in the first place. The Ninth Circuit decision, by the way, is an atrocity. I mean, there are a bunch of reasons, legally speaking, why it's ridiculous. And the most obvious is that it basically says that any state can now sue the federal government on any immigration policy that bars anyone. So if there's some random dude at the top of a mountain in Yemen, as I think it was Andrew McCarthy at National Review put it, if there's some dude at the top of a mountain in Yemen, that dude now has a right to enter the United States, according to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal. There are a bunch of other problems with it. It basically says that everybody, including illegal immigrants, has a right to due process under the Constitution. It suggests that they're allowed to look at statements that are made outside of the law and outside of the legislative history of a piece of legislation or an executive order in order to determine the content of the executive order, which is dangerous stuff. It's also wildly inconsistent. I mean, if that were the case, then certainly it would have behooved the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals to say that Obamacare was a tax, considering that Barack Obama kept saying continuously that it was a tax after it was passed. But the legal decision is ridiculous. That doesn't mean the rollout of this thing was good, that it was legally well written, or that the best strategy here is to appeal it to the Supreme Court.
Ben, I know you went to Harvard Law School. I'm guessing that if I asked you to guess, there are plenty of professors both at Harvard and at other elite law schools across the country who certainly like the outcome here, but would probably also find some way to defend, and even in front of their classrooms, I assume, would defend the decision somehow. Because I've heard people doing this on TV, and they always sound foolish, but some of them have fancy titles.
And no question. I mean, law schools are basically dominated by the left, and that means that they participate in what we call legal realism. The idea is that if they like the outcome, then they'll justify the logic that it took to get to that outcome, which is just bad jurisprudence. It's being a bad judge. And the fact is that they actually could have come up with some grounds to strike this thing down if they wanted to. They could have claimed that the Naturalization Act doesn't allow discrimination on the basis of religion or ethnicity, and that trumps the executive order provision that Trump cited, that provision from the U.S. Code that was passed in 1956. That would have been at least a plausible explanation, but they didn't bother citing to either the statute or the Constitution. They didn't even bother citing the executive order. Again, there are a lot of people who are going to say that this thing is illegal, this executive order is illegal, but the Ninth Circuit didn't even bother to make any sort of basic legal argument. Speaking to Ben Shapiro, who is the editor-in-chief of DailyWire.com, I want to ask you about a piece on the Daily Wire, Ben. Saturday Night Live turns into the anti-Trump revenge brigade. We have a quick clip we want to play of Melissa McCarthy as Spicer. Play it.
It's easy. It's extreme vetting. Extreme vetting.
But what does that mean, extreme vetting?
What does it mean? It means it's extreme. Okay, you know what? Spicy's going to explain it so you dumb babies can understand it. So I guess I can't use my big words. I'm going to have to use my dollies.
Now, I wish, Ben, that we actually could play for you. We don't have it loaded up right now, but the other anti-administration. I mean, look, the Melissa McCarthy one, I think, is a little more borderline. The one that went completely off the rails and was mean-spirited and clearly meant to demean in a way that you would never see under a Democratic administration was the Kellyanne Conway, Jake Tapper. She is a stalker. She's pulling out a knife. She's cursing. She's completely unhinged and crazy. This isn't laughter and good fun. This isn't conservatives or people like me and you pointing it out being snowflakes. This is just nasty, underhanded, and intended to undermine.
Agreed. I mean, I think that the Melissa McCarthy thing, I'll admit that the first time she did the Sean Spicer thing, I thought it was hilarious.
It's pretty funny, yeah.
Really funny. I thought that coming back to the dead horse and then beating it into a skeleton, I thought was a little much. But that's not a big deal. I think the Kellyanne Conway thing was egregious, not really because of the psycho Kellyanne Conway portrayal, but because of the sexuality of it. The notion that she was trying to get up in Jake Tapper's business. Kellyanne Conway is a mother of four. She's a married mother of four. And Jake Tapper is a married father of two. I mean, I thought that was over the top. It was clearly sexist. If it had been directed at anybody from the left, everybody would have said this is sexist. Can you imagine them doing the same thing about Hillary Clinton and her desire to be on the news all the time? Everybody would immediately said it was sexist, but you can do it to Kellyanne Conway, no problem. I'm not a fan of Kellyanne Conway's, and I thought it was ridiculous and over the top. But SNL has now made it clear that their mission is to tick off Trump. Like that's at least half of what they're trying to do now. It's not even being funny as much as it is, can we drive Trump to distraction? Will he tweet about us? And if he does, will that raise our ratings?
Now, I know you also go and speak, and you recently at campuses. You recently spoke at, was it Marquette? Is that right? And you addressed the student body there. Are you sensing that the hostility towards the Trump administration that exists in the media, that's beyond anything that I've ever seen in my lifetime in terms of the way the media is portraying this? I mean, the way it was hugs and kisses for Bush in comparison to what we're seeing for Trump. How is that playing out with students? I'm sure the faculties at all these places are predominantly, not entirely, I had a conservative thesis advisor, but I mean predominantly nutso on this. But how are the students? Are some of them starting to recognize that they're being fed stuff that's just not true, that's not fair, that's not even-handed?
I think there's a contingent that are starting to get annoyed with it. I think there's I would say most people on the hard left are still going psycho over Trump. I mean, it hasn't even been a month yet. But I think that, there is a contingent of people who are interested in hearing a different point of view, and they're willing to come and hear it, especially, I'm in a little bit of a different situation because I am not a Trump apologist. There are some of these speakers on campus who actually are. I'm not a Trump apologist, so that gives me a little bit of added credibility when I speak in front of kind of lefty college students. But
Did we just lose Ben?
I think.
Sorry, Ben, you dropped for a sec. Go ahead.
I think we are going to reach the edge point here where there are a bunch of psychotic break with reality where we're going to put in stuff that's over the top.
Ben Shapiro is the editor-in-chief of DailyWire.com, syndicated columnist, host of The Ben Shapiro Show and The Morning Answer. You also check out his pieces on National Review. Ben, appreciate you making the time. Thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks a lot.
And we're back. Buck Sexton with America Now, here with all of you. Please call in to me, 844-900-2825, 844-900-BUCK, B-U-C-K, like my name. Let's take Eric in Alabama. Eric, you're speaking to Buck.
Hey, what's going on, bud?
Rocking and rolling, sir. How about you?
Yeah, the same down here. And, sorry the call dropped the other day. I was enjoying our conversation.
Oh, no problem, sir. What's on your mind?
Kind of the heir apparent. Hey, I just wonder if you think this is a crackpot, harebrained idea. Okay, you remember SALT 1 and 2?
Mm-hmm.
Start the treaties we tried, and at the time, the Soviet Union was just as concerned with we were at, global nuclear annihilation, or they said they were anyway. I don't know, just how, sincere the Soviet Union was during those treaties that we tried to have with them.
I hear you, Eric. Let's bring this up to speed. So where are we now?
Sure. What I'm wondering is, okay, we worry about Iran. Could the big play be us working behind closed doors at the upper end, at the highest levels of power, on a big plan, a strategic arms limitation plan, where we're going to work in sync with the former Soviet, the Russia. And I know that nukes have spread out so much now that there is no containing them. But could they maybe turn their backs and let us go into Iran and nip their nuclear program in the bud, and let that be the first domino, and the second be the one that, and you probably know much more about, that can give some good insight on this. I don't know if you caught in O'Reilly's interview with Trump the other day when he mentioned their conversation with his conversation with Obama on the way of the inauguration, and he said it surprised him what he thought that Obama thought was our biggest threat, our biggest enemy in the world, our backstabbing friend, possibly Pakistan. Another nuclear power.
So we're covering a lot of territory here, Eric, with your question. I mean, you're asking if maybe the Trump administration is planning to work with Russia to take out Iran's nuclear program, and maybe also to contain Pakistan. And it's what the Pakistan question, I'm not sure how that ties into the others, but maybe that's a separate question.
Way ahead, because I thought maybe that could possibly get India to give up theirs.
No, I don't. I'll be look. I can answer. I think I've got enough here to give you some sort of an answer, Eric. And I thank you for calling in from Alabama. I don't see nothing that the Trump administration is going to do is going to get India or Pakistan to give up their nukes. That I think is foreseeable. So we can start there. And then in terms of Russia and Iran, this is an interesting place to go, because we start to ask the question. All right, so you've got the former administration with Obama. Becoming increasingly, belligerent, maybe not fair because it's in response to their actions, but you have the former administration certainly taking a more hardline stance vis-a-vis Russia than they had before the end of Obama's term. And the Russian actions, the bombing of Aleppo and bombing campaign in Syria that was not just haphazard in its targeting of civilians, but in many cases it seemed targeting civilians was, in fact, the purpose of the bombing. So that's a major problem. Never mind the additions of Crimea and eastern Ukraine and constant saber rattling in the neighborhood of the Baltics, which are NATO allies that we are obligated to protect. But now, okay, those are all problems. What do we do about it? Do we just hope to keep Russia at arm's length and not engage? Do we think that we can somehow bring about a tremendous turnaround in Russian policy? I just don't see that. And I think that you then have to start to ask the question, do we carve out areas where there's some places for cooperation? And is that something the Trump administration is going to do? A problem that comes up, and you see this all ties together, is that the political room that the Trump administration has to maneuver when it comes to dealing with Russia is getting narrower by the minute with the dust up over National Security Advisor Flynn and his phone call to Russia. And this starts to feed into Trump is far too positively disposed towards Russia, far too favorable towards Russia, and even up to the point which many journalists are insinuating, if not saying openly, that Trump would sell out his country for Russia. And that's a leap that I do not find in any way supported by the facts. That Trump is more friendly towards Putin. But keep in mind, go back and look at what Bush said early on. Go back and look at what Obama said with his, after my election, I'll have more freedom to, I'll have more freedom to deal with. He was talking to Medvedev at the time, but I got caught on that on the open mic. And then Bush saying, I forget what the exact words were, but I looked into Putin's eyes or his soul, and he was a good man or something. Well, I don't know about that, W. I don't know about that in retrospect. Point here being, what are you supposed to do? I mean, Russia is not North Korea. Russia is not even Iran. The international community is not going to band together with us and try to stifle and contain all Russian economic activity and military activity. Not going to happen. Russia is still a military power, not a global power per se, but certainly more than a regional power. You could probably say it's a hemispheric power, although it crosses a couple of hemispheres. So it's very difficult to see the way forward with the Trump administration on Russia, and not also see that there's going to be a lot of second guessing of everything that he does, because the stories that are out there now are to suggest that Russia helped him get elected, that he's a pawn in the Kremlin's in the hand of the Kremlin. And I don't see that, but I do see I'm not saying it's a tone. I don't know if it's a tone deafness or just a lack of caring, or maybe it gets swept into we make no apologies and we just have we're just ready to fight and fight back and counterpunch every time the press comes after us. On some issues, maybe the better path is to explain their position a bit instead of just meeting the hostility of the press with their own hostility. On a lot of stuff that works, obviously. And it has worked well for the administration up to this point. But I just wonder how this will shake out for not just Russia policy, but now that you've got Flynn apologizing to Pence, you're going to see news stories for at least the next 48 hours and probably all week about how Pence must go, and they're going to bring out expert after expert. Not Pence, that Flynn must go, and they're going to trot out all these people. The more senior and the bigger their title, the better, at least from previous administrations, telling us all that Flynn has messed up the workings of the National Security Council. So all of it. You can write it yourself, right? You don't have to read it because you know what they're going to say. They're going to come out with a major campaign here to get one administration official to step down. And let's be honest about this. This would be a pretty major victory for the media that's been going after the Trump administration from day one. This is all a media campaign. They broke the story about the Flynn phone call on Russia. They're the ones that have been hammering the Russia, not just helping Trump get elected, which of course was the main story the press is running with for over a month, but also that Russian fake news sites were affecting the the U.S. electorate's perception and may have tilted the election in Trump's favor. So this is all part of a very consistent and detailed plan and framework for how they're trying to undermine the administration. If they can convince enough people that Trump will do Russia's bidding, it's very hard to then turn around and say, well, he's going to make America great again, as long as the Kremlin's okay with that. That's what they're hoping to do. I don't see it as the dire crisis that certainly all the mainstream media folks do. But I do think that they have clearly made there's been some error here. There have been some mistakes made because you have the national security advisor apologizing, at least according to one news source, for misleading the vice president, making him look perhaps a bit foolish on this one. And that I do think is unforgivable. If the Trump team has always had as an admirable quality, I think, loyalty to its own. I would also imagine that disloyalty is the one unforgivable sin. And this is also now leading into stories, and I'll get into this more with you in just a few minutes. About I can't verify it if it's true. I'm pinging my sources. I'm asking people inside the intelligence community. I'm trying to get outside of the media echo chamber with this and speak to my friends who are patriots on both sides of the aisle, who work inside the IC and who work in law enforcement. I want to ask them if some of this is true, and I'm trying to get independent verification. But there's a lot of talk, a lot of hype right now about the insider threat and how the Trump administration at this point in time is maybe going to consider monitoring of personal social media accounts for those who work in the national security field and in the White House, monitoring the communication. I mean, this is the stuff you're reading. And it's, of course, intended to feel Orwellian, authoritarian, even creeping totalitarian. It's supposed to put you on edge. I don't know if it's true. And it's getting to a point now where there's so much negativity. There's so many damaging stories being run about the Trump White House that you spend all your time trying to track down whether they're true or not. And you find out that one or two aren't true. It's whack-a-mole. There's 10 more. And you're just constantly trying to verify and verify. And that's why people don't trust the press anymore, because they're sick of it. All right. Hour 2 on Buck Sexton with America Now will be upon us in just a few minutes. Stay with me.
The things that matter most in your day-to-day life are too important to trust to just anyone. That's why he's here. Buck Sexton with America Now. Sharp mind, strong voice. Buck Sexton.
Welcome back to Buck Sexton with America Now. Phones are open, 844-900-2825, 844-900-2825, 900-BUCK. Joined now by my friend John Schindler. He is, like me, a former IC guy. He is an ex-NSA and currently the national security writer for the New York Observer. Read his latest at observer.com. His piece, The Spy Revolt Against Trump, begins. Oh, my. John, good to have you.
Great to be here, Buck.
Welcome to the nationally syndicated Buck Sexton Show. Really appreciate you coming to hang out with us, John. Let's start it off with the Flynn situation. I mean, right now, the Flynn story is CNN's running with it as though they have a countdown clock to when he actually gets canned. How serious is this? I mean, do you think that he might be gone as a result of this dust-up?
Well, he certainly should be, if I can put my cards on the table there. He seems to have flat out lied to the vice president, who then turned around and lied to the American public about a rather important issue, which is his calls to the Russian embassy after the election, although New York Times has discovered from leaks that actually his relationship with the Russian ambassador goes back to before the election. Vice President Pence wanted to know if anything untoward, particularly Obama's sanctions on Russia and lithium, had been discussed. And General Flynn apparently said they had not been, and now he's changed the story. If you look, he's now back into the land of sort of non-denial denials, as people do inside the Beltway when they don't want to fess up. But he is supposed to have apologized to the vice president, which is a sign that obviously something bad happened.
What would lead the national security advisor to tell well, first of all, how do you think we found out about this? It seems pretty likely to me, I can't say obvious, that this has got to be a leak from either the former White House or the former and current intelligence community somewhere.
Yes, or perhaps both. Look, we monitor the phone calls to the Russian embassy in Washington, just like they monitor our embassy in Moscow. In fact, this is common in pretty much every world capital on the planet. When there's a hostile intelligence service nesting in an embassy, you want to know what's being said on phones and sometimes do physical surveillance as well. So these calls were intercepted. And, of course, what makes this truly bizarre is that Mike Flynn, a career military intelligence officer, retired three-star Army general, former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, certainly should have known. It's incomprehensible he didn't know that those calls were going to be intercepted. So that's part of what makes it such a very strange story. Ambassador Sergei Kislyak, his interlocutor, certainly knew that these calls were being intercepted. The Russians are well aware of that. So this adds a rather strange dimension to all this, and there are transcripts out there, classified, of course, not in the public domain, about what General Flynn actually said, which presumably is why he's backtracked now.
No, but see, the Logan Act, and I know that journalists have been bringing this one up, that, the Logan Act. Logan Act has never once been used to successfully prosecute any human being in this country since it was enacted, I think, in 1799. So the Logan Act is not the sort of Damocles hanging over the head of anybody who decides to have, a little side conversation about foreign policy, whether they're a senior administration official or just some congressman who's out there on a junket.
That's
Point here being, why lie about this unless there's something to lie about? That's what I don't understand. And this is the first time I'm seeing something in the Trump team that I'm like, guys, you really do have to clean this up. I don't know how anybody makes this go away for you.
Well, also there's the fact that, look, Russia has hung over the Trump campaign and now new administration for a year now is questions about Trump's Kremlin ties. Some of them very legitimate questions have dominated headlines from time to time, and certainly since his inauguration. Who thought it was a good idea to call the Russian ambassador up on an open phone anyway? I mean, you're just courting trouble with this kind of thing.
Can we just put something on the table, John? You think that Flynn is not a savvy intelligence officer. Is that fair to say? I mean, I read your columns on this, and you respect his service to his country. I do too, but and you know more about him than I do. I didn't really interact with him at all when I was CIA, and I didn't know much about him when I was inside. You don't have a high opinion of him even before this, or you didn't have a high opinion of him even before this Russia thing. Why?
No, his reputation is greatly inflated. He did fine up through the one-star level in the Army and basically tactical intelligence and support to our war on terrorism, and then that's great. The problem is tactical intelligence doesn't do you much when you're playing in the big strategic game inside the Beltway. And he fell flat on his face at DIA. He was fired by President Obama with cause. He lies about this, says he was fired because he demanded a tougher line on ISIS. That's simply not true. Now, I happen to think on the matter of ISIS, Flynn was right about a lot of this, and President Obama was wrong. That's clear. But Flynn was fired for cause from DIA, and that should have been a warning sign. This is someone who isn't good at running big, complex organizations, so why give him the even more politically charged National Security Council to run? So I think this is just asking for trouble. I mean, President Trump trusts Flynn. I think that's why he's having a hard time getting rid of him, which now he frankly should. You shouldn't be able to lie to the vice president, and then the vice president lies to the American public and get away with it. That should be, in a sane administration, that is a fireable offense. So let's see what they do.
Yeah, but of course, that will just be chumming the waters full of media piranhas. But it may happen. It may happen nonetheless. I want to ask you about the insider threat that's also being reported right now, or I should say, the insider threat programs. What do you think? I haven't had a chance. I just read about this today. I haven't had a chance to ask any of my friends who are inside. But there's real angst, if you believe the Times and Post primarily reporting on this, that the Trump team is going to want access to people's personal social media accounts, is looking over emails, very paranoid about leaks to the press, but that means that they might get even more Orwellian than the current security procedures in the IC and at the NSC would be, which are pretty bad to begin with, but they're going to go to a new level. Do you think does that wash with you? Do you think that's true?
I think it is true. I've heard the same from people in a position to know. I believe it certainly is largely true, and it's very disturbing in the sense that, insider threats are normally, we're talking about espionage and foreign intelligence. They're concerned about leaks. And look, leaks are a problem. The Obama administration cracked down on leaks extraordinarily, more than any administration, at least since Richard Nixon, and in some ways too much so. People went to jail for leaks. And look, That's all well and good. We're talking about leaking things that may not even be classified, but it looked bad for the administration. And if they want to create a climate of fear that will paralyze operations on the National Security Council and more broadly in the White House, this is the way to do it. The career folks on the NSC already hate the Trump people, and this is going to put them into an incredible spin-up of resentment and anger, which is just going to make the work climate there worse and less functional, and it's really dysfunctional now anyway because Flynn and his cronies don't know how to run this organization. Look, every new administration has teething pains. It takes weeks and months to get going, but they're just going very slowly already.
Now, when he nominated, and of course has since been confirmed, Mattis to be Secretary of Defense, you were very complimentary about that. You said Mattis is a warrior monk, learned guy, respected by the rank and file all the way up to the top, and that was an excellent pick by your estimation and by mine as well. Is that, assuming that Flynn does resign or is asked to resign, which may not happen, and I would say from what I'm seeing, it looks like 50-50 to me. Do you want to put odds on it? It looks 50-50.
It was really 50-50 over the weekend. We know there was a big kerfuffle in the White House about does he stay or does he go. This morning, it looked like he was staying. Mr. Spicer, the president's spokesman, late this afternoon, indicated that the question is still open at the White House. So are they genuinely confused? Are they trying to make everyone think they're confused? I don't know. But I think we're back to 50-50 now.
But if we put some, let's say he stepped down, do you think that bringing in somebody of the stature and respect of a Mattis at the Pentagon to be the national security advisor, to take over the day-to-day at the NSC, does that fix a lot of these problems?
It certainly could, particularly if his successor was able to bring in his or her people. I don't know that you could find a much worse national security advisor than Mike Flynn by temperament. I think you could pick better people randomly off the streets of D.C. His predecessor, Susan.
You are not going to the Flynn Christmas party this year, John.
Oh no, I've been off his Christmas card list for a while, and that's okay. His predecessor, Susan Rice, was a disaster, but Flynn is frankly an even worse one. And so, yes, this could get better. If Flynn is cashiered and his successor brings in people who are more functional, who are not just cronies, then yes, this could get better very quickly. Particularly, as you said, since Mattis is over at the Pentagon, is an incredibly solid guy. Even Tillerson at the State Department, he wouldn't have been my choice, but he's a smart guy. He wants to do the right thing for the country. This could get better. It would be hard to see how it could get worse.
Wow. All right. John Schindler, national security columnist for the New York Observer. Read his latest. The spy revolt against Trump begins at observer.com. My IC brother. Good to have you on, John.
A pleasure as always, Buck. Have a good one.
You too. All right, Buck is back with you now. 844-900-2825 on the lines. You want to call in? Oh, boy. Another show. I'm going to switch to some positive stuff for the administration in a second. Everyone's being so mean to the administration today. Come on. Gosh, guys, they're trying. I know, they should do better than that. They're the most powerful government figures in the world. It's a learning curve. They're doing what they can. It's only been a few weeks. Let them settle in. It's going to be a bumpy ride here, I think, for a little bit while the administration gets its footing. And keep in mind, the press doesn't want them to. They act like, we just wish they were more effective. We just wish they had a better sense of policy planning and intragovernmental communications. That is a lie. The more this looks like a bunch of buffoons running into each other in the hallway during a fire drill, the more that's how they can portray the administration, the happier they will be. A perfect example of this, New York Times right now talking about how the piece is from Trump's Mar-a-Lago to Facebook, a national security crisis in the open. And this just went up, I don't know, recently, that I can say. And when the missile test from North Korea happened, it seems here that the Trump team was at Mar-a-Lago, which I hear is lovely this time of year, and they assembled more or less a war room for the response. Not an actual war room. I don't think they were designating missile strikes or anything, but a war room for the response to this whole situation. And it was out in the open, and they were using their cell phones as flashlights. So yeah, and country club members were seeing this all happening out in the open. you don't necessarily want to do this kind of thing like that on the fly. It might be better to get to a more private location. Not necessarily. They're saying, they should have gone to a secure compartmentalized facility, that they should have moved to a secure compartmented information facility, SCIF, in the IC parlance. Okay, I mean, maybe not a SCIF, but maybe also don't do it where people are clearing their filet mignon and they can kind of just perk up an ear and catch what the response is going to be from the commander-in-chief to a nuclear test. Although, if their discussions were all unclassified, You can look at this a couple of ways. But, of course, this is all supposed to tie into the theory that this is amateur hour. They don't know what they're doing. Keep in mind, previous White House, you had people like Valerie Jarrett as the senior-most advisors to the President of the United States. You had, David Axelrod, Valerie Jarrett. Oh, yeah, these are people that I want to trust the nuclear codes to. I mean, come on. But you didn't see a lot of stories about how they didn't know what was going on then. And Obama was drawing on his vast national security experience when he became commander-in-chief, and by vast I mean non-existent. So you can tell there's a huge difference in tone and approach from the way all of this is reported about. I did want to get to the press conference today because I thought this was another interesting example of how this is all presented to us and also the expectations created around it. Here's what happened. You have the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. Hello, lady. He reminds me of the guy at like a beach resort that teaches the sailing or scuba or something, and he's like a little too cozy talking to your girlfriend or your wife. You're like, wait a second, this guy with the French accent, why is he talking to my wife? I'm just here for a surfing lesson. Step away, sir. He did a very good job. He's like, bonjour, ladies. I'm the Prime Minister of Canada. He actually speaks English without an accent, which so I'm being unfair, but he did switch into French a few times. But in my world, Trudeau is like the Montreal version of Trudeau. Is very French. Hello, ladies. Bonjour, bonsoir. So he's out there giving a press conference with Trump, and everyone's asking, are there going to be fireworks? Is there going to be some huge... Well, why would there be fireworks? This is a relationship that's about as solid as two countries could possibly have. Canada and America, they're our second biggest trading partner. We are by far their biggest trading partner, and they've sent troops to serve honorably beside ours, fighting right alongside ours in numerous wars, stretching back World War I, World War II, Korea, Iraq, Afghanistan. So, there's no reason to believe that this would go off the rails. Okay, I know Trudeau is very, hello, ladies, do you drive a Prius? Are you into carbon offsets? Are you, how do you say... I know he's so not this Frenchy, but I'm making him super Frenchy. But he's very left-wing guy, very pro. He describes himself as very as a feminist. I think half of his senior administration posts or something along those lines are women. And so what does Trump do? Trump meets with them and I think makes a very wise decision or savvy decision from a PR perspective. I think that this. Whenever someone says they're gathering a council, it's sort of like in the CIA when we had a problem and they're like, well, we need to hold a meeting. Yeah, that's going to fix it. When you gather together a council to tackle a complex problem, whether it's economic, political, or otherwise, they have some council on women's entrepreneurship. This is the kind of thing where I think Trump realizes, I'll get a free ride on this one. We got Mr. Left-wing feminist prime minister over here, and he wants to talk about women entrepreneurship. The lifeblood of the economy is the female entrepreneur. And Trump's like, yeah, I like women entrepreneurs. Whatever. So he said that they're forming this committee or this council. Who knows if that's going to do anything? But the press, what they really wanted was a moment of acrimony. They wanted a little bit of a back and forth, some verbal pugilism between these two leaders. And they even asked at one point, they tried to get Trudeau to weigh in. And do we have the Trudeau clip of him? Yeah, they asked Trudeau to weigh in on Trump's immigration executive order, as though, these guys are just meeting for the first time. They're trying to establish a working relationship between two very powerful individuals. I mean, America a little more powerful than Canada. We love you, Canada. I'm just saying, we got like more nukes and stuff, bigger military. But you're a great country. We love you. You're like our brother up north. But they're trying to establish a good working relationship. And the press is all like, oh, do you want to criticize this very politicized issue of the immigration order? And here's what Trudeau said. I got to give him credit. Play it. And you'll hear he's not that Frenchy.
Is for me to come down
not
and
at all.
Lecture another country on how they choose to govern themselves.
There you go. I had to say, this guy was super smooth in the press conference today, and Trump stayed on message, read his comments. So while everyone's talking, I know there's the Flynn story. Oh, you can just see him, and they're gonna be popping the champagne over at MSNBC. You know, we got one. You know, if Flynn gets fired, they're gonna be so excited. Oh man, they're just gonna be gloating over their morning lattes. They're gonna be really excited over that one, or their cortado. Also known as a flat white, as I understand it. And there's even another name for it out on the West Coast that I forget what they call it. But it's like a latte with less milk. I learned these things because I live in New York. But while that's all happening, you got Trump. Great meeting with Abe, Prime Minister of Japan. Great meeting with Trudeau. Look, I know Trudeau is a left-wing guy and has some kind of nutty ideas, and there's a video of him doing a whole falling down the stairs thing on YouTube. But he was good in the press conference today. It was kind of like props, high five, and mad love between America and Canada, as it should be. And these two guys look like they're going to, they're both celebrities in their own way. And I think they're going to get together and they're going to make Canada and America great again. I'm optimistic for that relationship. So while we're talking about some of the missteps and problems the Trump administration's had, let's also look at some of the victories. And the fact that there's some major policy stuff they've got underway that could really do good things for this country. Buck Sexton with America Now.
Buck is back. Hey, everybody, Buck's back. It's more of America Now. Throw in your 2 cents. 1-844-900-BUCK. That's 1-844-900-2825.
Buck Sexton with America Now. Back with you all. Thank you so much for joining. And if you're listening to the break, really appreciate you spending your time with me today. I just want to give you that's right, breaking news from the Freedom Hut here. That's right, Team Buck. We give you the breaking news as it comes in, of course. Steve Mnuchin is now your Treasury Secretary, or has gone through the Senate. They've voted to push through Mnuchin. I'm assuming party line vote. I haven't even been able to dig into the details. I'm assuming it was party line. But yeah, Mnuchin is... Fun to say, Mnuchin. He's going to be the Treasury Secretary. Former Goldman Sachs partner, a lot of financial background. You look at Hank Paulson. What was it, under the Bush administration? Former Goldman Sachs guy. This is not surprising. I mean, this is, at some point, you need to understand, if you're going to have people that are involved in senior government posts that deal with finance, the economy, the treasury, our monetary system, all that stuff. You probably want to have somebody who has private sector experience dealing with that. And that's going to mean that there are some institutions, just like you're going to have people from Harvard and Yale Law who are on the Supreme Court and in federal judge positions across the country. Just the way that it is. They can talk about hashtag drain the swamp all day, but who is a swamp draining Treasury Secretary that is qualified and acceptable to the left that any Trump administration would ever want to have? Well, you can ponder that one for a long time, because the answer is there isn't one. But that's where we are on that. Let's take some. So Mnuchin is through. There's a few more that need to get through. The Democrats have been slow rolling the process of getting Trump administration officials through. They say it's, of course, because they need more. They're extreme vetting Trump's nominees is what's going on here. But we will see if there's any last-minute hiccups or difficulties that they face. All right, calls coming in, 844-900-2825. Les in Arizona, KFYI. Thank you very much for joining in.
Yes, nice to talk to you.
You too.
I have a question about the security aspect of the leak on Flynn's telephone call. Those are all recorded. And isn't the leaking of any information that's recorded, anybody in the government that would have that information, aren't they under some sort of obligation not to leak any of that information?
Oh, yeah. If this is, as has been reported and would make sense, if this is a leak of classified signals intelligence, that would be a federal crime. So if somebody with access to that information got it via classified means, seems likely that's the case, based on the sourcing that the journalistic accounts that deal with this have put out there, then yeah, there's of course a law breaking, whether it's a White House official or it is somebody from inside the intelligence community itself. It's definitely illegal. But again, there are leaks and there are leaks. I mean, there are leaks that the people doing it feel like they are politically protected because even if they were found out, it would be seen as a reprisal against them for speaking truth. And part of the problem here is that even if you identified the leaker in the Flynn case, you're then going to prosecute this individual for telling? Let's assume that everything out there right now is true, and assume that Flynn hasn't been straightforward with not just Vice President Pence, but the American public. You're going to prosecute him for telling the truth? That's legally speaking, you can't do that. But are you going to get a jury to convict? Are you going to go down that pathway? Prosecuting leaks is a very politicized business. So your answer to your question is yes, absolutely. There's a high possibility, high probability that the leak is of classified information. That's a violation of criminal statute, of federal law. But there's very little chance, I would say to you, that anybody, unless the Trump administration wants to go down that path, but very little chance that they would, one, find this individual, and two, prosecute him or her, even if they did.
Yeah, but if you did find them, could you remove them by that from getting any more security?
Oh, you could definitely suspend their clearance. And then that's you. In a lot of these instances, that's the option that they choose to go with. Remember, if you work in the IC, if you're an intelligence community official or analyst or whatever, if you're like me, a CIA analyst, they pull your clearance, you're done. You can't go even work in the private sector with your clearance. I mean, you're out of the game. So pulling someone's clearance is essentially like telling, it's like taking if you're driving a cab, someone takes the wheels off your car. I mean, you're done, right? I mean, they don't have to necessarily fire you. You can't function anymore. So that's a possibility here too, Les. I think you're going to see more of these leaks. Though it's been very effective. This has created a real problem. It'll go away, but it's created a real problem for the Trump administration, and they're going to have to handle this. But thank you for calling in from Arizona, Les. Let's take Dan in North Carolina. Dan, you're speaking to Buck.
Yes, Buck. Hey, I love your show. I got to tell you, I'm really interested in your straightforward attack, and it's great because the biggest thing we got to understand right now is it's a big problem out there.
Thank you, sir. Yes, it is. It is indeed, and the media is acting as a fifth column against the interests of the republic, whether they know it or not, on a lot of these issues. So they are not good.
Absolutely are, and it's not good. They're not really they're not doing anything to help the American person. They're something the left has created that I've struggled my whole life trying to figure out where in the hell it all comes from. But truth of the matter is, we got to stay the course, and we got to stay with Trump, and he's on the right path. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some process hurdles and even process mistakes. This is even the fact that I even have to say this, Dan. Of course, the administration is going to make mistakes. They already have, and they're going to make more. But when you look at what matters, you look at major policy decisions, and also I have to say, Trump has seemed so far absolutely dead set on keeping his campaign promises, keeping his promises to those who supported him from the beginning, and even those who jumped on the Trump train towards the end. He said that he was going to do certain things in the campaign. We're only a few weeks in, but he is at least pursuing them, and still, he certainly hasn't changed his tune. Although I am a little annoyed about the delay in the tax. It looks like tax reform is not going to come until either end of summer or next year. I don't like. I think tax reform That's got to be right alongside Obamacare. That's got to be top of the agenda. They got to go with that right away. Why that would be delayed, I've heard the rationales for it. I'm not sure I buy them. I think they're getting a little shy about pulling the trigger on that, and they shouldn't. They should really move forward on tax reform. I think it's essential.
Well, and the problem is it actually is a global war. We're not dealing just with the United States anymore, and that's been the problem for the last 50 frickin' years. Is they keep trying to pull us into a global economy, a global world, and quite truthfully, hey, I'm all for globalization. Everybody is. Hey, I'm all for immigrants. I'm all for the LGBT community. I'm all for a woman's right to do whatever she wants, although I wish she would figure out a better way to do birth control. But the bottom line is this has been a long time coming. And as a 65-year-old war vet, I can tell you honestly that what you're doing, what Trump is doing, we're on the right course.
I think so. Dan, thank you for your service, and thank you for your call, sir. Shields high. Appreciate hearing from you. Maybe I'll talk a little, just to switch it up a little bit here, team. Maybe we'll get into the Grammys after the break. Just for a second. I know a lot of you didn't watch, you don't care, but there's some political takeaways here that matter well beyond the confines of the music industry, such as it were. So I might spend a little time on that. We've also got the little story on Netflix cheating. People that go and watch, they are supposed to watch a show with their spouse, their significant other, and they go ahead. And that's just very widespread. Some people think this is a very big problem, and a few other. Maybe we'll get to some of the stores more stores. By the way, dropping Ivanka. These are just some news items I wanted to get out there to you. More stores dropping Ivanka Trump's line, and they're all claiming, "Oh, it's just not selling that well." Yeah, because we're all idiots, sure. And they're still offering them on their websites. They're just making them less visible in the stores. I think in at least one or two cases. So we're being told that, oh, no, this isn't in response to the boycotts. See, now industry knows, and a lot of different companies have seen this, and they don't want to get caught up. And I understand this. They're just trying to run a business, and they're just trying to sell a product and pay their employees and make a profit and go home. But they realize that the issue you run up against with boycotts is the counter boycott, too. Sometimes if you stand firm, you'll be even more supported by customers. They'll make a real point of going out and buying. I think that happened with the owner of LL Bean. I rock the Bean boots. Love them. Duck boots, quack, quack. All day for me, man. I think the duck boots are awesome. But that was an instance of people supporting a product after she came under a lot of criticism for supporting Trump. So they said, well, we're going to go out and buy her boots. I have to say, the Ivanka Trump line being dropped from stores. And of course, the left then says, oh, we're so focused on this. They can focus on whatever little minutia they want to demean Kellyanne Conway, Ivanka Trump, Donald Trump, you name it. Bannon, they act like that guy's Lucifer. I mean, just whatever they want to focus on, any tiny issue that they want to blow up into a much bigger issue as a metaphor for the entire Trump administration, they can do that. But the moment you push back, they go, oh, you're a snowflake. Oh, you're just a snowflake. I'm not a snowflake, just asking people not to be jerks. There's a difference. I'll explain more what I mean in a second. 844-900-2825. Buck Sexton back with you all now. Thank you very much for joining in the Freedom Hut. Hope you're enjoying yourself. I'm having a great time, as always. Phones are open, 844-900-2825. So Senator Al Franken was on, the Bill Maher show, I guess? And he was expressing, his concern about Trump's mental health. Here we go. Play it.
So the senators say he's mentally ill, right? He's an idiot. I mean,
this is actually Piers Morgan talking about it.
Isn't it? No, I wouldn't have personally voted for Donald Trump. He's not my politics, and I'm not even American, so I couldn't vote for him if I wanted to.
That's right.
But I didn't think anything could match the hysteria that I've seen in Britain since we left Europe, and I voted to stay in. But this hysteria about these racist, sexist Neanderthals who've seized control of our country. And now I come to Los Angeles, where if you don't say that Trump's the new Hitler, you get tarred, feathered, and dragged to Santa Monica Pier, and you get drowned and beaten within an inch of your life. I just think it's time everybody took a massive, gigantic chill pill.
But he is mentally ill.
He's not mentally ill. He's a president of the United States. He won a free democratic election.
You don't think kings can be mentally ill?
Okay, well, kings are, first of all, Bill Maher, kings are a hereditary succession. So you don't have people that get to hear like the king's platform usually. That's not how it works. A monarchy is based in a hereditary succession. So there's that little aspect of it. But also I wanted to play what this is a sitting U.S. Senator, Al Franken, what he says about the president on a television show with millions of viewers, or at least 2 or 3 million viewers, I think, speaking about this. And he says flat out, this is sitting U.S. Senator who, by the way, may decide to run for the presidency himself in 2020. So not an insignificant figure in Democrat politics, saying that he thinks the president is mentally ill. Play it.
And some will say that he's not right mentally. And then some are harsher.
Okay, he says he's not right mentally. I mean, I think he's alluding to mental illness. Piers Morgan mentioned mental illness there. But first of all, what is the left doing when they make me agree with Piers Morgan, who is saying something that we've talked about here many times already, which is that the hysteria, the greatest advertisement for pro-Trump support that's out there right now that I know of is is who hates him and how much they hate him. And we saw some of this in the Grammys, which I know the Grammys, a lot of you are like, boo, don't talk about the Grammys. But it's quick. This is going to be a painless Grammy segment. Because you had, we have, what is it? The moment that Busta Rhymes, whom was made a breakout in the media, in the music business when I was in high school, I think. So it's been a while for Mr. Rhymes. It has been a while. But he came out with a Tribe Called Quest and a few others, and this is what he had to say about the President of the United States. Play it, please.
I just want to thank President Agent Orange for perpetuating all of the evil that you've been perpetuating throughout the United States. I want to thank President Agent Orange for your unsuccessful attempt at the Muslim ban. When we come together, we the people. We the people.
You know, look, if Mr. Busta Rhymes wants to say that he thinks that that the president's Agent Orange, look, satire is essential in a free society, and you have to be able to criticize those in power and to mock them. I mean, look back at the power of political cartoons stretching back all the way to the founding. I mean, you have to be open to, or you have to be allowed to mock political figures. So, you know, making fun of the president is very different for me than making fun of the president's family. So I get that. All right. But I just have to say, I love this perception that's out there among people in Hollywood and in the music media, in the music industry, and of course elsewhere, but in those two places in particular, that they're somehow being brave by doing this. You know, brave maybe is what I think it was Joy Villa was her name, standing up and wearing a Make America Great Again dress, which she clearly did as a publicity stunt. I haven't heard whether she supports Trump or not, but you do that so that people like me go on radio and talk about you. Or really, she wants people on TV and various channels that cover media, I'm sure, to cover music to talk about her. But nonetheless, it still counts. There's all of this self-congratulatory grandstanding that goes on, and somehow it never ceases to be a point of enjoyment and this pseudo bravery for those on the left, that they get to stand up and they say this stuff and they know it's going to be good for their careers. People are going to clap for them. They're going to say it's awesome. But there's really no place now where you're less free to state your opinion than, I think, in Beyonce worship. I mean, you better say that she is the greatest ever, or else. If you go on social media and you say, you know what, that performance that she gave was kind of that was trying really hard, it just wasn't that good, people come down on you. I mean, you get told you're the worst kinds of names. So now I'm glad that I'm learning the rules for contemporary discourse in America. You have to hate Trump or else you're Hitler, and you have to love Beyonce or else you're the worst ever. I mean, this is This is the context for many of our discussions now. I have to tell you, I don't like worship of politicians. I like worship of media figures. I don't know if it's possible to like even less, but it's definitely right up there for me. And the more someone tells me that I have to love someone's art or their, whatever, if they're a writer, if they're a musician, the more that I have to love their creative process or else I don't know anything, the more skeptical I become and the happier I am when I can stand up and say, nah, sorry, it's just not that good. And whether you love her whole catalog of music or not, Beyonce at the Grammys just wasn't that good. Buck Sexton will be right back.
Buck is back. Hey everybody, Buck's back. It's more of America Now. Throw in your 2 cents. 1-844-900-BUCK. That's 1-844-900-2825.
Buck Sexton back with you all now. Thank you so much for being here. 844-900-2825. So the Trump administration is dropping the Obama administration's guidelines for transgender students and their use of bathrooms in schools across the country. This is a departure, and I'm sure the left is going a departure from what had previously been set up by President Obama and his White House. So I'm sure the left is going to be very upset about this. This is part of a larger discussion, a larger debate, some would even say a culture war, to eliminate the differences between the sexes, to pretend that this is all just a question of how one identifies, not of biological reality. We're joined now by an author who tackles that very subject in her new book, Ashley McGuire. She's a journalist and author of Sex Scandal, The Drive to Abolish Male and Female. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So gender norming, the gender spectrum, this is all stuff that even as someone who went to a pretty left-wing college, but a little over, now it's like 15 years ago. This is new stuff to me. I'm trying to learn the terminology. This is just changing very, very rapidly, this whole gender studies and gender spectrum issue. What's going on?
Well, what I try to do in the book is show all the different ways that this is playing out in society. I think that people think of this and their mind immediately jumps to, say, the bathroom issue, quote unquote. But in fact, this is happening everywhere, whether it's the United States military, on the one hand, having different physical standards for men and women, but on the other hand, essentially saying we're going to put women in combat roles, whether they like it or not. Or then, having a national debate about whether or not we should be requiring women to register for the military draft, something that, 5 years would have seemed completely insane, but actually turned into a national debate, and the Senate actually voted in favor of it. To colleges and universities starting to experiment with co-ed dorm rooms, while at the same time banning things like single-sex clubs, and then wondering, why it is that they have rape epidemics. To elementary school kids, I give the example of one teacher in, I think, Washington State banning Legos from her kids' classroom because the boys were more inclined to it while the girls were more inclined towards girly toys.
So wait, Legos are part of the patriarchy? I did not know that.
Well, no, it's totally affecting toys. I mean, Target last year came out and said, we're no longer going to categorize our toys based on boy or girl. And in fact, we're not even going to use blue or pink background wallpaper on the shelves that we put them on because that's so offensive.
And this whole notion of gender versus biological sex, this is what people try to point. I've had people point this out to me as though they're trying to enlighten me, like I'm coming out of the dark ages and I know nothing. And I say, well, no, there's XX chromosome, XY chromosome. And they say, well, no, that's biological sex. That's not gender. And I say to them, well, no, actually, it is gender. There seems to be some continued confusion on this point. This is not a what I think is what it is situation. You can think whatever you want. People can change their name to whatever they want. They can dress however they want, but you can't change your gender.
Well, right. And one thing I point out is actually we're not even using the right language. When we talk about men and women, the correct word is sex. when you check a box on a form, usually it says sex, male or female, and that is the correct scientific way to refer to people as male or female. Gender is a word that basically came about in the 50s and 60s, mostly out of, women's studies departments at colleges and universities, and it's a basically meaningless label. And in fact, many people who are sort of behind the gender ideology push will agree and say, this word can mean whatever you want it to mean. And in fact, the Obama administration, one of the things that they did in the example of the administrative regulation that you mentioned at the beginning of the show was actually replace sex with gender and say that you cannot discriminate on the basis of gender. Well, what does that even mean? I mean, how can a woman, for example, say she's being discriminated against if, male and female actually aren't even legitimate categories anymore?
I remember not long ago being on radio and saying, it's just a matter of time before individuals who are accused of serious crimes that are going to serve lengthy prisons or convicted of serious crimes that are going to serve lengthy prison sentences decide, it'd be better to be the one biological male in the all-female prison than the alternative. And I figured, based on the logic of this progressive leftist movement to eradicate the distinctions that exist, very obvious distinctions of gender, that it was only a matter of time before there would start to be policies that reflect this. And I've found out recently that some prison policies do reflect this, that there now are male inmates that say they are transitioning, that they are transgender females, and they're putting them in female prisons. I'm not sure it's the case in this country yet, but I believe it's happened. I think it might have been in Australia recently. I'll have to check on the news story that I'm thinking of at the top of my head. But this is happening in places now. They're actually taking it to that length.
Oh, sure. And, I cite the example in my book of a domestic violence shelter in Canada that was forced to go all the way to the highest court in Canada to argue that men should not be allowed into a domestic violence shelter for women. And I think, where does it stop? How soon until we have biological boys in girls' summer camps? I mean, just last week we heard that the Boy Scouts is now going to let in whoever based on whatever sex they identify with. But we're talking about children, underage children, potentially placing biological girls in tents, potentially overnight, with pubescent boys. Now,
tell me how in your book you get into how embracing sexual differences can make policing safer, government more efficient, and hedge funds lose less money. How so?
Well, with policing, for example, it's very interesting. They found that women, because men and women have such a different approach to things, and because women are physically just not as strong on average as men, they found that women have a very different approach to policing and actually have a style that frequently de-escalates violent situations. Because a woman knows that if it's a matchup of her strength versus some 250-pound bad guy, she's not going to throw him to the ground. She probably can't even throw him onto the back of a car. But she can talk him down out of a violent situation. And I cite all sorts of studies that have found that, when you're looking at police brutality, excessive force lawsuits, that women are dramatically less likely, almost never have lawsuits against them like that, because they just don't opt for that approach to policing. And so, the last couple of years we've seen all of these problems with police brutality and violence, and people are starting to argue actually more female police officers might solve that problem. So that's that example. And then with the hedge fund example, I talk about the 2008 financial crisis and how because women are overall less or more risk averse, hedge funds that were run by women or had higher percentages of women actually lost less money in the financial crisis because they were, less inclined to get involved in some of these risky financial deals that got us into that crisis. And so a lot of businesses are actually finding that the more women they have, the more likely they are to have a more balanced approach, that it's a good balance between, sort of the male propensity for risk, the female propensity to sort of have a horizontal view of things, and that these are things that we shouldn't be threatened by, or that it's not patronizing to say that women have a different approach to these things. It's a mutually beneficial thing that helps us bring out the best in each other.
Speaking to Ashley McGuire, she's the author of a new book, Sex Scandal, The Drive to Abolish Male and Female. One last one for you, Ashley, before we have to go. Why is this so important to the left? I know people that are not themselves transgender, have no one in their family who's transgender, and don't even know anybody who is transgender. And if you use the wrong pronoun or you run afoul of their leftist orthodoxy on this, they will lose their minds on you. How did this become such a big issue to progressives?
Well, I think it's a real ideological agenda, and I think there are people who are pushing it who have the noble goal of equality. They're thinking about equality between the sexes. But the reality is that there are others who are pushing an agenda to essentially deconstruct nature, that they don't like the laws of nature. They don't like the realities that, we are male and female. We're not disembodied, that our bodies are very much a part of who we are. And I think that, that's a big part of why you're seeing this actually starting to be pushed onto children, because the younger you can sort of get people with this mentality, the better. But, I think that if the end goal is equality, the idea that the only way we can achieve it is if we make men and women identical is ultimately a doomed one, and one that is going to hurt women because it forces them to compete against men on male terms.
The book is Sex Scandal, The Drive to Abolish Male and Female. Author Ashley McGuire, thank you so much for joining. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Buck Sexton back with you all now. Oh boy, we don't have the details on this yet, but Drudge Report, hat tip for posting it. The Washington Post is supposed to lead off tomorrow. Its lead story is going to be Justice Department warned White House that Flynn could be vulnerable to Russian blackmail. Ooh. Look, this is going to come down to what the details are. That's that someone could be vulnerable to blackmail by Russia. Maybe just I don't know. I don't want to speculate here, but if the Post is running with this, I'm not surprised at all that someone in the Justice Department, which is overrun with, and at very senior levels, with lefty progressives, that someone may be. Now we may be talking about, oh man, this is just getting dirty, everybody. The background investigation files. There are few things more sensitive that the government has access to on an individual basis than your background investigation file. I had a top secret clearance. I went through that whole process, and that's just something that, and I had to go through the polygraph and all of that. Not fond memories. There's no part of you that sits there when you're being polygraphed and the guy or girl that's polygraphing you starts asking you the most personal questions imaginable. You're like, this is great. Sign me up. Can I do the polygraph again tomorrow? I'm really enjoying myself. I rather like a polygraph. No, you never think that. It's not a fun situation. And of course, also, it's voluntary, but it can be used against you in a court of law. I've heard people tell stories, at least, about how someone will be like, yeah, I haven't done anything since, I buried that body 20 years ago in the backyard. But I mean, now I'm ready to serve the government again. It's like, nope, now you're ready to go to prison. So you don't want to say things in the polygraph that are incriminating. But they have all this background information on you. A lot of it is, when you look at the raw intel they collect, and it can be stuff that your ex-spouse may be saying about you, your really annoying neighbor who played the loudest EDM, electronic dance music ever for 2 years and you hated. He may get to tell the background investigator that you are a Chinese-run spy or something. You don't know. Or that you're selling drugs or whatever. And that just goes into your file, and then they adjudicate. Then they actually look at things, and then they decide, are you someone who, are these accusations, if they're serious accusations, are they true? And they make it. I should also point out, by the way, that a would-be senior member of the NSC that's considered a close confidant of General Flynn's was denied a clearance recently, and the reporting was that even CIA Director Pompeo agreed with that designation. So that's That's not good. But I really am curious to see what you can tell this is like clockwork. I mean, they are going to push hard to see if they can get a very senior level resignation from the Trump administration this week. And I would say to you, look, the Trump team knows you never placate the left by feeding them one of your own. You never make them go away by conceding, by trying to make some sort of a concession. There is no sacrifice to the progressive gods you can make as someone who does not adopt the policies and attitudes and beliefs of the left. There's nothing you can do that will make them stop or go away. They're like Skynet in Terminator, or rather, the Terminator in Terminators. He absolutely will not stop. It does not feel pity or remorse. Kyle Reese speaking to Sarah Connor. The progressive left does not feel pity or remorse, and it absolutely will not stop until America is destroyed. But I don't know if they can. I don't know if they can hold the line on this one. I don't know if they should. It depends on what they have on Flynn here. But the Post knows that if they run a story about a senior government official like this, that's very specific at this point in time, on anonymous sources, and it's hazy, there's going to be a real backlash. Maybe they'll still do it. You look at what BuzzFeed was like. What's up, bro? We're just gonna drop the dossier on Trump and whatever, man. You'll figure it out. No, that's not how this is supposed to work, BuzzFeed. But that was what they did. We'll see. We'll see what happens here with this Washington Post story. But I would be, if I were the inner circle of the Trump administration, I would be concerned right now. Look, I'm always going to tell you how I feel about this stuff. I'm not going to hedge, because I know that it's among conservatives out there. There are a lot of them, not all of them, still a never Trump movement, but a lot of them just don't want to hear any criticism of Trump or the administration. This isn't Trump criticism per se. This is just looking at the reality, what's going on with Flynn. But again, if they have real information on how he could be vulnerable to blackmail. Remember, being vulnerable to blackmail doesn't mean you're being blackmailed. Doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. And plenty of times, people in the past have been denied a security clearance or denied a senior government role, not because they've done anything wrong, but just because they may be a risk for compromise. Kompromisat, I think is what the Russians would say. And so that's a possibility here. If it is the case that General Flynn is in some way indebted to Russia, I don't know. He did work and I've got to be honest with you, he worked for a while as a paid contributor to Russia Today, which is a network that even very early on in my media career as a former CIA analyst, and I was a GS nobody, just another dude showing up to Langley, one of a cast of a lot. Can't tell you the actual number, but one of a cast of a lot of people there. And when Russia Today was like, yes, Buck, would you like to come and we'll have you come on the show and you'll do that's actually not how the producers sound either. I'm giving you a fake Trudeau impersonation and a fake Russia Today producer impersonation. They're like, hey, Buck, would you like to come on Russia Today? But in my mind, it's more like this. They're like, why don't you come on? We'll talk about the foreign policy and you can discuss how America is the worst country in the world. So I would not go on RT. I just wouldn't do it. They asked me to go. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I have no interest. And I'll go on MSNBC. I mean, as long as I feel like you're not, I'll go and speak to either side. But you can't be funded by an oppositional foreign government. And trying to undermine the security and foreign policy interests of the United States. That I will not go and participate in. And Flynn did. And I got it. It was not smart. So that's a problem. I don't know what's going to happen here, but this is not looking good. And I bring this up, and I know it seems like, why, Buck? Why so much focus today on this? If they are able to get this is National Security Advisor, very senior position, if they're able to take Flynn down over this, fair or not, man, the media is going to go into hyperdrive on this stuff. You're gonna see so many stories about the Russia connections in the week ahead and disarray in the White House. This could be big problems for Trump's Trump team. So we'll move on to immigration in a second.
Buck Sexton with America Now, where there's always something to talk about, where you can trade opinions with Buck. Not sure you'll win, though. Just call 844-900-BUCK. That's 844-900-2825. All right, Buck, you're on.
Indeed, Buck is back. Lines are open here, 844-900-2825. Butch in North Carolina. Butch, you're speaking to Buck.
Hey, Buck. Good afternoon to you.
You too, sir.
I enjoyed you and Ambassador Bolton on Maria Bartiromo this morning.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, it's great. It's a lot of fun. I'll be back on Maria's show, I think, this Thursday from 6 to 9 Eastern. So anyone listening, tune into Fox Business. And thank you, sir.
I enjoyed that.
Ambassador Bolton's great, by the way. You got a guy who is tremendously knowledgeable about the world, legitimately, unlike some of the other TV experts on other networks that say they're foreign policy or national security experts. Bolton is really smart, and he's also a really cool guy. He'll go on Red Eye on Fox and does a great job. I think they've even called him either the mayor or the president of Red Eye before. He's fun, man. He's a really smart guy and obviously great mustache and is a lot of fun to be on TV with. So thank you for noticing that, Butch.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Listen, but the reason I was calling you is I think the main culprit behind all of this left stuff we have going on now that is thoroughly promoting it is George Soros. It's pretty well documented he's paying these people to protest. And, the man is pretty nefarious to begin with. And I've been curious for several years now. Why is this gentleman, I hate to call, and I use that term loosely, I wonder why he is not guilty of sedition, one of the three terms mentioned in the Constitution.
Well, he's allowed to. I mean, you can pay people to protest. That's not illegal to pay people to protest. I don't think it's honest or a good idea. But he look, Soros's hand in a lot of these things is hidden because it goes through organizations that act as middlemen, trying to make it seem like they're more grassroots than they are. And this is, by the way, commonplace with a lot of leftist activist groups, particularly on the environmentalist side. I've seen how you get these major donors and they give money to these middlemen organizations that work in the environment, and then they give money to even smaller organizations on the environment. People can say that this is just to spread the wealth around, but of course what it does is it hides the hand of who's behind all this. So I have to be honest with you, Butch. It's not sedition to pay protesters, but it's also, I think, indicative of the activist left's dishonesty. If they were to come out and tell people, one, who's behind them, who's supporting them, they know that would be a problem for public perception, and also they like to make things seem like they're something they're not. There's the AstroTurf. I think it was Nancy Pelosi who first started using that about. I think she said that about the Tea Party, which was not true. But the notion that you have these very wealthy donors that are paying for all these people to make something seem like a Main Street populist uprising on an issue. That's, if it were real, they wouldn't need people to pay them, right? And of course, the protest culture on the left is well ingrained, and not just protests but boycotts. These are just culturally things that are much more commonplace among progressives than they are among conservatives, and you can make your own choice or make your own conclusions about whether that's because conservatives have to go and work and pay the mortgage. So
yeah, but if the intent is to bring down the United States, that is sedition.
That would be true, but I don't think you can point to. I don't think that Soros is paying anybody to walk around with let's march on the White House and overthrow the government sign. So it's a very hard case to make. I mean, you bring up an interesting point. I think I said even on the show last week, there are only 3 crimes that are mentioned specifically in the Constitution, and they are treason, piracy, and counterfeiting. So treason is a constitutionally listed crime, but it is a very high bar for good reason. But Butch, I appreciate you calling in from North Carolina, Shields High, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. All right, immigration. Man, I wanted to get immigration Friday, and I kind of went off on a Buck tangent. I want to hand out some Buck slaps to people on the left, and I should start getting we need to get a slap noise. So I want to do a Buck slap. It's like, hi-ya. I'm thinking it's more like a karate chop than a slap. I don't know why. That's how I visualize it, at least. Maybe a fly kick or a roundhouse Chuck Norris style. But I wanted to talk to you about immigration on Friday. I didn't really get to it. Now today, here we are in latter stages of the Freedom Hut broadcast for 3 hours here, and I'm just getting to it. We're going to keep hitting this issue. This is going to be the central front, I think, for the Trump administration in 2017. My expectation is that they will have greater resistance, more fighting, and will expend more of their time, energy, and political capital on immigration than really any other issue. Because on Obamacare's never been popular, and they also are going to go about repeal and replace in a way that I think is going to be piece by piece, which is going to be harder for the left to say, oh, they're kicking you off your insurance, which is good. Hopefully they do this thing right, and they'll get away from Obamacare. Everyone I know, and I know I said I'd talk immigration. Here I'm talking Obamacare. The tangents are run fast and furious around here. Sorry about that. But the reality of Obamacare is that it's bad, and people who have it know it. And there are some people that are benefiting from it, but primarily it's through Medicaid. And that's not really the promise of what this was. It was supposed to be better health care, affordable health care for all. And what it's turned into is subsidized health care for some, terrible health care that they're paying way too much more for a lot of other people, and a lot of Medicaid expansions that eat up a considerable percentage of states' budgets, and it's wildly expensive. And then the moment you start putting more illegals on these exchanges, I mean, just imagine which direction the cost curve is going to go on there. Okay, illegals, there's a good transition point. Immigration, already you can see the left is gearing up for a huge fight on this. Over the weekend, you had interesting exchanges. I don't think I have any of the audio for you right now, but we have interesting exchanges between Miller, who is the White House senior policy advisor, and George Stephanopoulos, specifically on voter fraud. And you can see that there's this part of the left that likes to say, well, you don't have any evidence. And then they say, well, we have circumstantial evidence for voter fraud that primarily would involve non-citizens, including illegals, but also just non-citizen green card holders. And they get very agitated over this, and they'll usually stumble into there's no such thing as voter fraud. And then you point out, well, no, actually, there is voter fraud. And then they go, oh, okay, fine. But there's not a lot of voter fraud. And you say, well, how would we know? And when you start to come up with ways to look into this more thoroughly and establish what the real number of illegal votes cast would be in any election, there's a tremendous amount of pushback. I think it's because the Democrat Party realizes that if there is an evidence-based conclusion that we reach that voter fraud is substantial, doesn't have to be 3 million. If it's 50 to 100,000, I think people would say, whoa, that's way too much. And when you look at the number of votes cast and the number of people who are registered to vote who are not citizens, and how easily this can happen when in different government offices they are offering driver's license, they're offering government benefits to people, and simultaneously handing them a voter registration card. You can see how even as a good faith error, this could be happening in considerable numbers. I don't know what the numbers are, but everybody that I know who follows the immigration closely and isn't in the tank for open borders or, internationalist, we are one world perspective on things, says, no, we don't have the numbers. We don't know. It's also like when people say there are 11 million illegals in this country. Okay, that's been the number for a long time. Is we sure it's not 12? Are sure it's not 13? Really, really very sure it's static at 11? Okay, maybe. But we definitely don't know if people are voting legally or not. There are some cases, one very prominent or well-reported on case from last week where someone got 8 years for voter fraud. I believe she was an illegal. And what the left realizes is that if you can establish that voter fraud is real, meaning that it's happening and it's happening in numbers that we have to be concerned about. And quite honestly, when you look at the margin of victory in Minnesota for Oh, yeah, Al Franken, who was on the show earlier, when he was like, I think that President Trump is unstable. You have Al Franken on, and he won over, I think it was Norm Coleman, by hundreds. It was in the hundreds of votes. The margin was razor thin. So you don't have to prove a lot of voter. Think about this now. You don't have to prove a lot of voter fraud for it to matter. If you can prove substantial numbers, certainly in the tens of thousands or in the low thousands even, people would say, whoa, we need to rein this in. And then you start to draw the next conclusion. And this is what becomes really damaging for the Democrats, I think, is, okay, so you haven't wanted to know about this all along. You obviously want as many people who are not voting legally to vote as possible because it benefits your party, because the Democrats are the party of the state, of state benefits, of getting free stuff that other people pay for. And if you're an illegal, chances are that it would be in your immediate financial interest, your immediate economic interest, to support the party that wants to give you free or more free stuff. Look, Republicans want to give free stuff, too. That's a whole separate conversation. I'd love to get there, too. We're not even talking about entitlements anymore. Everyone says, we pay into entitlements. You know what? You don't pay. You pay in less than you take out a lot of the time. That's a side note. We'll get there. But on immigration, there has been this obvious switch. You go back and you read the New York Times editorial page from like 1999. I'm thinking of one editorial off the top of my head. And they were illegal immigration hurts wages in this country, hurts workers in this country, and is unfair to the African-American community because illegals are disproportionately competing for jobs from within the African-American community. That was the New York Times at the turn, at the turn of the century. I mean, that was the New York Times not long ago. At the turn of the century makes it sound like a long time ago. Somehow the Democratic Party shift. I wonder if the shift to the more votes, the merrier, let's not ever see if there's illegal voting going on, and let's register as many people as possible, knowing that there's going to be mistakes made, intentional or not. I wonder if it has to do with who illegals will vote for. All right, I got to hit more of these immigration raids. I'm on fire here. We got more coming. All right, Team Buck, I mentioned before that the Washington Post was going to have this story out about how Flynn was vulnerable to blackmail. This is just a pile-on. It's a nothing new burger, that much is for sure. It may not be a nothing burger, but it's a nothing new burger. It's not much to go on here. You've got the former acting Attorney General, Sally Yates. She of I'm not going to defend Trump's executive order, even though that's not my call fame. She's in her last few hours working for the Department of Justice before she was fired. That's who's cited in this piece. And she felt that Mike Pence should know that Flynn, this is all according to the Washington Post here, their sources, that Flynn was lying to Pence about the contents of that call and that she was worried that there was, quote, illegal activity. No one has ever been prosecuted under the Logan Act. It is of dubious constitutionality as a statute to start with. I do not think it would survive scrutiny. And the only reason it hasn't been overturned or thrown out is because no one ever, I think one person may have been prosecuted in history and it was unsuccessful. I think there was one case brought in, it was like in the 19th century. So that this was, quote, illegal is just, that's nonsense. It's not illegal. Not any more illegal than any number of high-profile visits to foreign countries where they've discussed foreign policy. I'm sorry. There's no conviction going to happen here, and it's an overbroad statute and not going to happen. That all said, and so then let me just say that she said that he was, quote, potentially vulnerable to Russian blackmail because of this phone call. That's hyped. That's not. No, I'm sorry. That's not new information, and that is not. There's nothing here that to me says blackmail. The Russians are going to blackmail Flynn by what? By saying, you either sell out your country, your career, military, you sell your country out to us, or we will tell everybody that we discussed the sanctions before you become very powerful. I know, I sound like Count Dracula now. Man, my Russian is getting sloppy too. But still. That they think Mike Flynn's going to sell out his country to the Russians. He's vulnerable to blackmail because they may say that, he spoke to them about sanctions when he hadn't said that. I mean, that would be embarrassing. But I don't think Flynn is going to sell out America for that. So again, I thought we'd have to wait maybe until tomorrow morning before the story was posted, but it's up right now. And you got Sally Yates, acting Attorney General in the Department of Justice, who is a clear left-wing Democrat partisan pretending to be a DOJ lawyer. Okay. She came in, I'm sure, and was very happy to do all kinds of stuff with the Obama administration. I'm sure she loved all the hyper-partisan activities of the, hyper-partisan activities that the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice has engaged in under the Obama presidency. But they're saying that they're running this piece about blackmail. Quote, Justice Department warned White House that Flynn could be vulnerable to Russian blackmail. I'm sorry, but that is overstating the case here. That is overstating this case. Vulnerable to blackmail? I don't think so. Not based on this. I thought there was going to be something else. Flynn had accepted some payments for some speeches in Russia. Only person who's allowed to get paid way too much money speaking Russian is Bill Clinton. I mean, that's not corruption. That's just good old-fashioned fun, baby. But yeah, he got paid, I think it was $800,000 for a speech through either it was a Russian subsidiary, a company, or Russian oligarch, one of those guys. I think it was his most valuable speech ever, or at least close to it. Had to do with Russian interests. But, he just loves America and just loves the world and wants help. I mean, he's a good guy. At least we don't have to deal with him very much anymore. Blackmail? I don't think so. I was expecting more. And remember, I was willing to say, I'm worried here. Maybe they've leaked some. Maybe they've got something. This is nothing. Okay, I shouldn't say it's nothing. This is not what they're setting it up to be. This is not what they're saying it is. It's already out there that he's already apologized to Pence, misled him about the phone call. Clearly, Flynn got a little jammed up here, but the other side of this is you got senior DOJ people who have access to classified just like the intel community people do, and they are selectively putting stuff out there. I'm sure. Who wants to take a guess as to who may have spoken to the press about this Flynn thing in the first place? Ooh, anybody? Anybody want to start placing some bets on that? So the unelected branch of government, the bureaucracy, is trying to go after Trump and all of his people, including Flynn. And it looks like they've scored at least some kind of a hit here on the administration by making things difficult for Flynn. Oh, man, I wanted to... Okay, guys, I promise we'll talk more about immigration. I teed that up, but I had to get this because it just broke now, the story in the Washington Post. So I don't think this is going to be this story, at least, is not the end for the National Security Advisor in this administration. But they're going to try to hype this thing up tomorrow, man. That much is for sure. Please go to AmericanNowRadio.com/podcast to listen to the show on demand for free. As always, you can share it with friends. The best thing you can do for me, if you are someone who considers yourself part of Team Buck, and if you're listening, I certainly hope you do, just tell a couple people about the show. Tell a friend about the show. I'll be back with you tomorrow night, same time, same place, my friends. Until then, as always, shields high.